Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. So if you're a developer grinding through an intense coding curriculum, or honestly, even just a focused learner trying to really nail down your foundations, you already know that not all study days are created equal. Today, we're diving into a very specific, absolutely critical checkpoint from our source material. We're going to unpack what it really takes to survive the Day 15 JavaScript gauntlet. Let's map out exactly where we are. We kick things off in week 3. This is a huge pivot point where the training wheels come off and we move away from general concepts directly into technology-specific reviews. The curriculum intentionally narrows the focus right here to test your true, deep comprehension. And then boom, we hit day 15. This isn't just another day on the calendar. This is a highly targeted moment where broad learning completely stops and a really intense technology-specific interrogation begins. So let's look at the day 15 focus, which is entirely on JavaScript. By completely isolating JavaScript like this, the curriculum is basically sending a giant warning sign that you absolutely cannot just hack your way through this checkpoint. Here is the actual gauntlet you have to run: closures, async/await, promise handling, type coercion, and memory leaks. Right off the bat, you can tell this isn't some basic syntax checklist, right? This is a highly curated hit list of the most notorious stumbling blocks and, frankly, the most powerful features in the entire JavaScript ecosystem. You've really got to know the deep internal mechanics of the language. Okay, moving right into our first major concepts: closures and memory leaks.
So, closures. They carry just an immense amount of weight in programming. If we break it down simply, a closure is really just a function's way of remembering the variables from where it was born. It's kind of like a function carrying around a little backpack of data wherever it goes. Reviewers on day 15, they want to see if you actually understand how your functions are trapping state, and more importantly, if you're doing it on purpose. It's the engine behind so much of JavaScript's flexibility, but man, it requires some really careful handling.
And that brings up exactly why understanding closures is so crucial. When a reviewer looks at how you use closures, it naturally leads them straight to step 2, hunting for potential memory leaks. Because think about it. If a closure accidentally holds onto a massive chunk of data in its little backpack way longer than it needs to, it actively blocks the system's garbage collector from doing its job and cleaning things up. And that leads to memory leaks, which are essentially the invisible threat of the coding world. You're not going to get a giant flashing red error message when a memory leak happens. There's no warning. Instead, your application will just silently degrade, it'll eat up resources, and eventually, it just crashes. Proving that you can write code that simply functions, well, that's only half the battle. Proving you can efficiently manage memory is what actually makes you a professional. Let's shift gears now and tackle async/await and promise handling. Now, you might be wondering, why does the curriculum strictly single out both of these methods for managing asynchronous code? Well, it's because they are attacking the exact same problem. Promises are the raw, underlying mechanism for handling future values in JavaScript, right? Well, async/await is that sleek, modern syntax layered right on top of them. Day 15 tests both, because you have to know exactly when to rely on the explicit chaining power of a raw promise, and when it makes more sense to leverage the clean, synchronous look of async/await. Which brings us to the final pillar of the review: type coercion. Type coercion is basically the last major hurdle in this specific review. And honestly, JavaScript is famous for trying to be almost a little too helpful by automatically converting data types completely behind the scenes. That is exactly how you end up with that incredibly quirky math where adding a string of 5 and the number 3 equals 53, but a string of 5 minus 3 somehow equals 2. If you are relying on that automatic coercion without fully understanding what the language is doing under the hood, that is exactly how subtle, catastrophic bugs are born. Day 15 demands that you prove you are in absolute control of your data types. So, stepping back, how does this all fit into the grand design? The curriculum takes us from those broad, overarching concepts in week 3 and distills everything sharply down to these 5 precise JavaScript challenges on day 15. It's a fascinating microscopic zoom that really highlights how a massive educational goal is executed by throwing incredibly specific, targeted technical hurdles right at you. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question for you to chew on. Would your JavaScript pass the day 15 review? We've unpacked the source material, we've walked through the gauntlet, and this syllabus, it isn't just for developers actively enrolled in that specific week. It is a wildly effective self-evaluation tool for any of us. If a senior reviewer opened up your codebase right now to heavily scrutinize your closures, poke at your async operations, and test your type safety, would you survive the test? Definitely keep those 5 pillars in the back of your mind the next time you sit down at the keyboard. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always,